Canadian politics has finally decided to get exciting. Although the drama is putting me, and I'm assuming many of us, through way too much. It's a little bit uncertain, and I'm excited to talk about it. I mean, it is a lot of fun. Between Trump's threats of tariffs or the RCMP investigation into the Greenbelt scandal on Doug Ford, news is headlining the snap election in so many different ways. Tonight, joined with Wyatt Sharp, Anthony Fior, and Hasneet, we're discussing the snap election in February for the Ontario leadership. Guys, this just got confirmed today. Now, when people are seeing this is a week or two out. What do you think is going to happen? What are we going to see from this?
So, the Premier's obviously called an election, and it's his right to call an election. He's gone to the Lieutenant Governor General and asked for an election. She's granted it. And so we're going to see 27 days of campaigning, and we're going to see, he wants the election to be the premise of, I'm the best person to deal with Trump and tariffs for Ontario. Again, he's not the only person dealing with it, but he believes he's the best person, and he believes that is a better argument to make than all the other arguments that he'd be trapped in terms of healthcare or other items. Right,
and that's certainly the argument. I mean, Anthony, we were debating, and why we would have debates with each other on, hey, healthcare and housing and this, and the second Trump comes out and says we're placing a tariff, everything else gets dropped. I mean, it's crazy to me. Okay, so I've got a ledger poll conducted as of January 19th, shows the Progressive Conservative Party leading with 46%, the Liberal Party leading at 22%, the NDP's just closely behind at 19%. I mean, is this why? Is this going to secure, the election for him for the next few years? Is that why he's doing this so fast?
Well, you're certainly seeing a lot of mixed reaction from people across the political spectrum. You have Bonnie Crombie from the Liberals, who is saying that this election is not needed in any way. Of course, you have the figure behind it. It's going to cost, I think it's around $160 million. Elections Ontario said that they themselves were just informed officially of the decision to call this election a few days ago, and that's why it's going to cost so much money. And so from Doug Ford's perspective, he says, at least publicly, that the reason he's doing this is to put the question of tariffs to the ballot box so that Ontarians can make a decision. He said that he is prepared to have to spend billions of dollars on the very issue in question of tariffs, and he feels it's integral to, again, put that question to Ontarians. But certainly from a political standpoint, it's quite obvious that in many cases people do this when they want to secure 4 more years in government. And so that's what Doug Ford is perhaps thinking behind the scenes. But I've been talking to some people over the course of today, and I mean, you cited that poll. It's not seeming as likely as it was perhaps a few weeks ago that Doug Ford would be able to secure his third kind of consecutive majority government. I think a minority government is certainly a lot more likely as to what people are expecting.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, I was going to say, it just seems so timely that the Conservatives are leading in the polls. Oh, great time to put an election up. Anthony, what are your thoughts on this?
It's a power grab.
Is it?
Yep. Plain and simple.
So is this normal? I mean, is this a conservative problem, or is this anybody in his position would probably do this?
I'm sure anybody looking at the numbers would have done the same thing.
David, are you recommending this in this particular moment?
As a strategist, I can't lie to you. If the situations were reversed and we were the Liberal government at the time, I would suggest the same thing.
Really?
I'm sorry.
David Peterson did it in 1990.
I knew you would pull out a random.
And then we got Bob Ray.
And inherently, that's the risk, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think the Premier and his team are very smart people. They are aware of the risk. And I think they openly go into this. But again, look, they've got both the opposition parties caught pretty much off guard. They don't have enough candidates appointed. They don't even have money in their treasuries to fight this. And hence why you're seeing sort of the reaction from them. Again, the public is the overall decider. The voters will decide what happens. Right. And that's going to determine what issues get fought about. So that's why this is really interesting, what's going to happen.
I find it interesting. I mean, the RCMP investigation has been going on for how long, roughly? It's been about a year, just over a year?
About a year and a half now, I think. Yeah, it started showing up in the news.
So, Bonnie Crombie is basically come out and saying, I mean, it's shielding him from accountability from something like that. Do you think there is a strategy on that front?
Yes, absolutely. Because if he gets caught with his pants down with that corruption scandal, he secured a majority government. He gets caught, he resigns, somebody takes his place, they fill out the 2 or 3 years that are left. I think what the public needs to understand is Doug Ford has a majority mandate. He goes until June of 2026. He has a super majority right now. He doesn't need another majority mandate, but he wants one. And just to play devil's advocate with our friend here who's a strategist as well, or would be a wannabe strategist, I'm sure he would have advised them to do the same thing. So there you go.
I mean, it does seem like it's pretty timely.
Look,
it just makes sense.
At the end of the day, like I don't want to say I don't want to make the scandal sound like it's small. It's not. It's massive. It's 2 times the gas plant scandal. But like what you do want to understand is that when the report comes out, they don't know when it's going to come out. They don't know what it's going to say.
Right.
And
Well,
like,
Hazel, we're going to leave it right there. We'll be right back real soon. Stay tuned.
I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. I'ma rule the world, yeah.
With little warning, Ontarians are being asked to vote, but will they even show up? Many don't know this election is happening, let alone have time to research their options. And like Wyatt said in the previous segment, this snap election comes with a rough cost between $160 to $100 million for taxpayers. But is it a worthwhile investment? And if Ford is confident in his leadership, why not wait until next year and let voters decide on schedule? These are the kinds of things we're going to be talking about. Wyatt, I want to throw it over to you. One of the things I'm curious, because this was something that I thought about when researching for the show. A lot of people are saying, I mean, he's already premier, so he's making the argument, oh, well, I need to win this in order to have be in a better position to fight the tariffs. But the election wouldn't have been called for another year and a half. Still, to this day. So why the rush so quick now? Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. This does seem like a little bit of a power grab.
Well, you saw something very similar, and you see, the same type of thing often in politics, both at the federal and the provincial level. But Justin Trudeau in 2021, when he decided to call a snap election, it was because he knew that his response at the time, anyways, to the COVID-19 pandemic was fairly popular amongst kind of the general population. And so in that scenario, the election wasn't supposed to be until 2 years after that. But Justin Trudeau himself still decided to go to the polls, call a snap election. And I think Doug Ford is kind of doing a similar thing here now. I mean, you've seen him kind of wearing his hat around saying Canada is not for sale. He's selling a message of unity to the people. And I think people are buying that in a lot of respects. And so he himself just feels very confident that if he goes to the polls, people will reelect him, as I said earlier, to a third consecutive term. And I think most of all, you have to remember, Sam, that all of these people who are part of the PC government right now are very secure in the fact that they're making and that they're in the top 5% right now of wage earners and salary earners in the province of Ontario. They don't want to lose that. And so by going to the polls right now, they're going to be securing themselves a job basically for another 4 years minimum.
I mean, that's fair. And it does seem like a good strategy. I mean, why would a snap election change whether or not he's equipped to make decisions for Ontarians, whether it be the election now or a year and a half? Does it actually really change anything, Anthony?
No.
Like, you could just make
it doesn't change anything. What does it change? He has a majority mandate. He has 16 plus seats above the threshold for a majority government. Yeah. I don't know what to compare it to. Look at this is what's happened. He saw the success that Tim Houston had in Nova Scotia. They're trying to replicate that. We saw this in 1990. David Peterson was, I think, at 56% in the polls. Bob Rae became the premier, and we had 5 years of an NDP government. That's a whole other episode we can do. So I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know what the outcome is. I've yet to see debates. I've yet to see any substantive campaigning.
I want to jump in on there because this election is happening in a month. How many days is it to campaign roughly? Was it like 27 or something?
27 days, yeah.
27 days. So explain to me how that is fair for voters with only 27 days to now make a decision on who they're going to vote for.
Yeah, so it's the mandated time that you have it was set within the act. And so that can be modified. And the premier, the government in charge can extend it, but I guess they want it to be faster than not because they want to get back before the federal government comes back and also before Trump sort of lays into anything. He could do something in the middle of this and that could cause additional risk to the premier. So again, there's a lot of thought that's going into
So he could be exposing himself by doing this. But I guess like when I think about this, the amount of people I've spoken to that's my age or older, or even 30-year-olds, they don't even know the election's happening. Like they haven't even heard this. Do you know how many people probably haven't heard this? I was trying to find a stat. They have no stats or surveys on this because it's so recent. Is that the point?
Look, elections generally, especially Ontario elections, there's lower voter turnout than it used to be. Federal election used to be the highest, but again, like over the last few years, the last 2 elections for sure, we've had decreased voter turnout. It's concerning for everybody. Youth turnout was the highest in 2015 when Justin Trudeau first got elected because the issues he brought, whether it was cannabis or gambling, those are things that our generation was probably more into or doing it already, but had a legal way to do it, but now a legal way to do it.
Right.
And I think there's nothing that's exciting people to that. To let's go and vote.
Let's go and vote. I see. I mean, I don't know what more would be exciting for the Trump. Yeah, go ahead.
Voter turnout in 2022 was 27% of all Ontarians, meaning three-quarters of people in the province decided they didn't even care enough or like the candidates enough to go out and vote. And as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of political kind of pundits are concerned, not a whole lot has changed within, the barely 3 years between these two elections.
That's actually really fair. When we brought up the 170, 180, $160 million one too, that would be a bill that they'd have to pay now or a year and a half from now. Is it going to hurt us more if we pay it now, Anthony? You got about 15 seconds.
I don't know. The number's actually bigger. It's 189 million, and that was tweeted out by Colin DeMello today. So it's actually like most plans that this government's released, it's going to cost us more money than it's supposed to. It's all a power grab. I'm going to just keep repeating that. It's all a power grab.
Okay, we'll be right back to discuss this a little bit more and what voter issues might care about.
I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. I'ma rule the world, yeah.
With the Ontario election coming up, there are a multitude of different issues to focus on. Understandably overwhelming to a lot of people, they're deciding the issues they should allow to influence their voting decision. It's tough. From a strategy perspective, what do you think politicians think voters care about? I want to start there.
Look, obviously the premier and this government, they understand it's the little issues, like hence giving out the rebate checks that are going to be in your mail that you will be receiving during the election campaign, which is just honestly, it's a good.
I do feel like that backfired a little bit though. Like I think most people at this point know any government stimulus is just like making the problem worse.
Look, it's one thing for us to like sit from 10,000 feet away and say what's happening and be on social media and stuff. But it's another thing for that family that actually needs $200 to pay
That's
for
fair.
a bill.
Yeah.
And I think we have to really take that into consideration. Sometimes we don't think about those things, and it's an important thing. I think the other point is they want to fight the election on the terms that they want to set. And right now they've set the terms of I'm the best person to fight Trump. And if that's the narrative, then he will win that narrative. But the opposition leader's job is to change the narrative, to talk about the issues that we all, like Wyatt brought up and Anthony brought up about housing and healthcare. If you can bring those issues up, people are very dissatisfied with the government about those things.
Wyatt, from a young person's perspective, at least for both of us, what do you see as being a main issue or a few main issues that young voters will care about? Will it be the Trump tariffs that they're seeing on social media blowing up and they're saying, oh, we got to figure this out, oh, it's bad? Or will it be the classic cold healthcare, housing, labor, energy? Like what is it going to be for young people?
Yeah, the most important one is education, hands down, especially because a lot of people right now, even at a high school level, when they're first kind of getting their introduction to politics, the public education system in Ontario right now is a disaster. It has been a disaster. It's not just a Ford government thing. It was also a Kathleen Wynne government thing. I myself went to a public school that was an elementary school that shut down over the course of the Kathleen Wynne government. And then over the course of the Ford government, that same school got merged with another school. And so there's this whole kind of big show going on right now relating to education. I think over the course of the pandemic as well, the learning of students was staggered and ended up kind of getting disrupted in a lot of regards. And people are just further and further behind. There's been a number of kind of standardized tests, the literacy tests for grade 10 that students are mandated to take in order to get their diploma, the EQAO testing that happens every year that are seeing some of the worst results in a number of years. And all of this is kind of laid at the feet of COVID. And so young people are looking at what party has the best platform for education, but then also for the economy so that they can afford to actually pay for their education, as again, both the provincial and federal government don't really seem to be doing a whole lot to try and bring the cost down, or at least not doing a lot to go beyond the talking points and actually get into some substance-based policy discussion.
Yeah, so I think Wyatt makes really good points. And I think education is important, it is key. But the thing is, I don't think youth are voting on education. Like, I think they should be. I think if you guys knew sort of how your future was going to be handled and what was happening to it, you probably want to take part in that. But I think there's other things that are in your front view. Like, people right now are looking at the gas price. They go to a grocery store, meat is double the price. Like, honestly, this stuff, as a parent, I have 2 kids, it just blows my mind. Like, sometimes I'm like, how do you afford this stuff?
I will say, and that was one of the points that I wanted to make is, everybody, okay, so 60% of voters are saying cost of living is the main thing that they're going to look at, okay? So what is cost of living? Well, that's kind of everything, right? I mean, that's groceries, that's gas prices, that's cost of services, that's cost of everything. Will the Trump tariff, though, because I'm curious, this is really getting a lot of attention in the time period, and of course, Doug Ford is using this as his main campaigning for the next 27 days. Will this just be like the main focus for even young people, regular people, older people to decide on, hey, I care about the Trump tariff more than anything else in their reaction?
I think it'll be both. I think it'll be two things. One, it'll be a serious answer to the question, and the other will be just like a scapegoat question. Well, he's the best to deal with Trump, and that's what I'm going to vote on. Or people who work
I think
in
a lot of people are thinking that.
Well, but here's people, like he mentioned, he's a parent, he's got to buy groceries. So there's cost of living issues. But how about this in manufacturing? The number of people that work in manufacturing in Ontario, they're legitimately concerned about what these tariffs are going to do to that industry. Who has the best position to do it? We're not going to know. Like I said, we haven't heard them debate. We don't really know what's going on. And this just happened like basically today. So I don't know if that's going to be the whole reason. I usually vote in every election. I'll tell the public on television. I usually vote based on what people are doing for healthcare and social programs for people. People in this country.
Okay, so I did hear on CTV, Vashi interviewed Bonnie Crombie, and she had said basically when questioned on the Trump tariffs, I don't want, that shouldn't be the main primary focus, that we need to go back to healthcare, education, cost of living. So do you feel like they're going to be able to switch that narrative literally in 27 days?
So look, the Premier of Ontario is not necessarily responsible for the entire negotiation of the tariff. That is the federal government's responsibility. But I understand why they're raising the issue. And it's the opposition leader's job, and the Bonnie Crombie and Mayor Stiles are going to continue to bring up healthcare, housing, education. And if they can make those issues stick in the next 27 days,
then
that's where we're going to have a fighting chance. Yeah.
All right. We'll be right back. What does this mean going forward?
I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah.
Here to discuss what's coming up next. What does the Ontario election mean for Ontarians moving forward, not just in the short term, but an outlook for the next few years of a Ford leadership? I just want to confirm this. So Doug Ford wins in 15 days. Let me ask you, how long will he be in power for if he wins?
Well, he'll be in power for as long. If he's named a minority, it'll be when the minority government falls or comes in, or the next election cycle. If he's a majority, it'll be the next election cycle, or when he again decides to run an election.
So for the people who don't know, what does that mean? Is that how many years is that?
It's 4 years.
So 4 more years. Okay, so that's basically the entire term of Donald Trump's presidency.
That's correct.
Is that by coincidence?
I think so.
That just seems really timely to me, does it not?
So I would say to you, I can see where you're lining that up, and it lines up logically. But I would say, look at it this way: is that I think the Premier is aware, and the provincial Conservatives are aware, that if a federal election is called, the federal Conservatives may possibly win the election. And I think they're worried that whatever the federal Conservatives do will affect the entire, just like Bonnie Crombie's worried about the federal Liberals have done to her sort of fortunes that she thinks, right? So again, I think there's a lot going on in the decision making, but again, the numbers don't lie to them. They have internal numbers that tell them that they're probably going to win. So,
Anthony, how do voters decide and decipher, I guess, really what issues they should care about going into this election? Because we've been hit with a plethora of different ones. I'm looking at this as a voter thinking, I'm not even going to vote because I don't even know what issue really matters.
So that was the excuse I got in the last election, was that nothing really matters.
So they just keep using it.
Yeah, and then half of the people that said it didn't matter don't have a family doctor, and they're lining up in Walkerton like for the Eras tour to get their box office tickets. 500 people in a friggin' lineup. So elections matter, and this is how I found people to vote. I've knocked on over 6,000 doors in Ontario. I've talked to a lot of people in this province. People are worried about bread and butter issues and the issues du jour. Tariffs, yes, that will be. Cost of living pressures. What does the province have control over? The biggest one they have control over is rent costs and housing costs. That's a big one. I'm not going to say which party is the policy, but there's one political party that's advocating to get rid of development charges. That's going to bring down the cost of housing. More tax incentives for purpose-built rentals. Right now, it's going to be what's going to happen to the cost of living with the pressure from the United States. And I think that that's going to be the big election issue. That's my personal opinion.
Wyatt, who do you feel, or from conversations you've had, because you talk to a lot of different people, who do you feel would be best equipped to handle a plethora of these issues? I mean, we've seen concerns from the Ontario Conservatives, but then we've also seen concerns from the Ontario Liberals, et cetera. Who do you feel is going to be, or in conversation, might be the best bet?
Yeah, I interviewed 2 of the party leaders on my podcast today, and what became very clear to me is that it's being separated almost over the course of this campaign as to what issue you're voting on. And I think a lot of people are going to become kind of what we know as single issue voters. If you're voting on healthcare, there's a clear choice. If you're voting on education, if you're voting on cost of living, tariffs, there's another choice. And so I think right now it's really just a matter of what issues are you putting at the forefront and who do you feel is best equipped to deal with some of those issues. And if you're looking for kind of more of the status quo, so to speak, then Doug Ford is obviously that candidate. And also, conservatives are generally speaking the ones who are fiscally responsible, but Doug Ford is openly admitting that because of the tariff situation, that will not be possible. And I think, as the other panelists said, it's very clear at this point right now that Bonnie Crombie is nervous that whatever Justin Trudeau is doing is going to rub off on the provincial Liberals, and they really can't afford that for the obvious reasons, but also because they're still feeling the effects of the Kathleen Wynne era. And right now, the Conservatives still always try in every election cycle to pin every single policy failure of the Wynne government on whoever is the Liberal leader. And they certainly did that successfully in 2022. And we're seeing maybe they'll do it again this time.
Haz, we've got about 30 seconds left here. What do you think would happen if the Liberals decide, let's say it's Mark Carney as their Liberal leadership or whatever, whoever it is? Do you feel that that would have an influence on Ontario voters here, whether that be Conservative, Liberal, NDP, whatever it might be?
So it shouldn't, but it probably will. And I think if Carney is selected leader, which I think he probably will be, I think that will have an impact because he brings a sense of strong fiscal management and he brings that kind of, I can handle the economy and I can also handle Trump. I think when you think of Mark Carney and you've seen what he's done throughout his life, through his career, you kind of get that confidence. I think if that confidence rubs off, if I'm Bonnie Crombie, I'm taking it.
Interesting. Interesting.
Why wouldn't you?
Well, I appreciate you guys all joining me. Thank you very much. This was a pleasure. And I know voters at home will make their decision based on what they feel is most important, but I hope that this educated all of them. So thank you for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you.
We want to hear from you, especially if you disagreed or feel we missed something important. Join the conversation at MyGeneration on all social media platforms. We'll end off with this. Do not simply accept what you are told. Challenge your thinking, engage in differences, and please try to listen to new perspectives. Have a great night. Enjoy.
I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah, yeah. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. 해가 지고 뜰 때까지 I'ma